Hello champs, welcome to my channel The Learning Tree, and today we are going to discuss on the topic sexual reproduction in plants, which is a part of the chapter how do organisms reproduce, that is from class 10. So let's begin, and if you like the video please do subscribe, share and comment. And so let's begin. So when we talk about the sexual reproduction in plants, so already we have studied about what is sexual reproduction and what is asexual reproduction. So for sexual reproduction there are involvement of two parents, that is the male and the female. So male and female gametes are involved during sexual reproduction. So how does sexual reproduction takes place in plants? So when we have to study that, so before that you need to know the parts of a flower or the parts of the plant which takes part in the sexual reproduction in plants. So in a plant we have the roots, stems, leaves and flowers. So the flower is the part which is the reproductive part of a plant. Okay, I repeat, so the reproductive part of the plant or the part of the plant which takes part in the sexual reproduction is the flower. Whereas the remaining parts, that is the leaves, stems and the roots, they are the vegetative parts of the plant which do not involve in the sexual reproduction. So only the flower part takes part in the sexual reproduction in a plant. Okay. Now, what are the different parts of a flower? Now we know that the flower is the reproductive part of a plant. So what are the different parts of the plant flower? So in a flower we have the male part, the female part. It can be either one of them, or it can be combination of both the male and the female part. Along with that we have the colorful petals. Okay, the colorful part of the flower, that is called your the one that is called your petals. Okay, the another one is your sepals, the lower part which is attached to the flower, that is called your sepals. Okay, and the male part and the female part. Okay, the male part is called the stamen and the female part is called the pistil. Okay, so this is the pistil. So pistil is the female part or the carpel. Okay, it is also known as gynoecium, and the male part is the stamen that consists of anther and filament. We are going to discuss in details for each part. So we have the petals, the colorful part of the flower, the lower part of the flower, that is called the sepals, which covers the flower. Then we have the male part, that is the stamens, and the female part, that is your pistil. Okay, so the four parts are the sepals, petals, stamens and carpels. Carpels, another name for carpel is the pistil. And then we have the sepals. So with the sepals, as we have already discussed, it is the green structure that protects the inner parts when the flower is in bud stage. So when you have a bud or the flower bud, the outer covering, that is the green part, is called, it's nothing but the sepals. Then we have the petals, the colorful part of the flower, those are your petals, and the colorful part of the petals it allows the insects to get attracted for pollination. Okay, so the color part, that is the petals, will attract the insects for pollination. Then, as I have seen, the male reproductive part is the stamen, and the stamen produces the pollen grains which contains the male gamete. So in the sexual reproduction, as we have seen, that male gamete and female gametes are involved. The male gamete comes from the pollen grains that are present in the stamen, and each stamen has two parts. One is the filament. Okay, the long part, this is your filament. Okay, and on the top is your anther. Okay, the swollen top part which contains the pollens is the anther, and the stalk is called as the filament. And then we have the female part, that is the pistil. So pistil or the carpel, it is the female reproductive part which contains the ovules, and the ovules contains the ovaries. Okay, so the pistil or the carpel is divided into three parts. One is the sticky top, that is the stigma where the pollen grains will fall for fertilization. Then you have a long tube, swollen tube. Okay, and then we have, that is your style, and the below is the ovary where the ovules are present or the female gametes are present. So each ovule has one egg cell, that is the female gamete. So if you see this is the male, these are the male parts of the flower, that is the stamen. Okay, so here you see these are the yellow ones, so that part is your the yellow ones are the pollen grains. Okay, the pollen grains are stuck to the at the top, that is the anther, and the small stalks, those are called as the filaments. So these are your filaments. Okay, so as I've seen, so and stamen consists of anther which contains the pollens, and the long stalk is called as the filament. Next, the structure of pistil, that is the female part of the flower. The female part of the flower, as I've said, the top part is the stigma, it is sticky at the top. Then we have the style, okay, and then we have that is this part is called your ovary. So ovary contains the ovules where the female gametes are present. Now, so as one more picture, so stigma, the style, the ovary contains the ovules. So it can have more than one ovules. Okay, so each ovary can have more than one ovules. So this is the female part of a flower. Now flowers, based on whether both male and female parts are present or only either of them are present, flowers can be classified into unisexual as well as bisexual flowers. Those flowers where only either the male or the female reproductive organs are present, they are called as unisexual flowers, and the flowers which contains both male and female reproductive organs, they are known as the bisexual flowers, are also called as full flowers. Unisexual flowers are called incomplete flowers because so either of the male or the female parts are present, that's why they are called as incomplete. Whereas bisexual flowers are called complete flowers because they have both male and female organs, or the both male and female parts are present, so they are called as complete flowers. Unisexual flowers, they to reproduce they undergo cross-pollination, whereas bisexual flowers do not require cross-pollination, they undergo self-pollination because both male and female are in the same flower or the same plant. Examples of unisexual flowers are papaya, white mulberry and watermelon. Whereas in case of bisexual flowers, examples you can see tulip, sunflower and lily. So these are some examples of bisexual as well as unisexual flowers. Next, so these are some of the flowers which have only either male or the female reproductive organ. So they are called as, that's why they are named as unisexual flowers. Uni means one. And here we have the bisexual flowers where both the female and the male parts are present together. So this is hibiscus, so you can see these are the anthers and this is the female part. Okay, so same way this is lily, sunflower. So these all are bisexual flowers where both female and the male parts are present in the same flower. Next, pollination. Now when I say in order to have fertilization, pollination is necessary in flowers or in plants. So if we have two types of pollination, one is self, one is cross pollination. So what is pollination? Let us see first. It is the process of transfer of pollen grains from an anther to the stigma of the flower. So that process is called pollination. So pollens has to be transferred to the stigma in order to have fertilization. So that process of transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the flower is called pollination. And two types of pollination are seen. One is self-pollination and other is the cross-pollination. Self-pollination means if the transfer of pollens takes place in the same flower or another flower of the same plant, then we call it as self-pollination. So self-pollination mostly occurs in bisexual flowers where the male and the female both reproductive organs are present in the same flower, so their self-pollination can occur. We don't need external agents like the bees, wind, water is not required because it is happening in the same flower. Or self-pollination also refers to the flowers of the same plant. Suppose two different flowers are there in the same plant. So if the pollination is occurring from one flower to the another flower of the same plant, then also we call it as self-pollination. Whereas cross-pollination means transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of another flower of a different plant of the same species. Means two different plants are involved here. One flower of the same one plant, from there pollens are transferred to the stigma of another flower of a different plant, but both the flower plants must be of the same species. Then we call it as cross pollination. So in order to have cross pollination, because it is happening between two different plants, so we need some pollinating agents like insects, birds, wind, or water. So these are pollinating agents who or pollinators who will help in pollination. Next is the types of pollination. So here we see, as we have discussed, self-pollination. So the left picture tells you about self-pollination and the right one is cross-pollination. So you see self-pollination where both female and the male reproductive organs are in the same flower. In cross-pollination, two different flowers of two different plants of the same species. So from one flower of one plant, pollen grains are transferred through a pollinating agent and are put in the stigma of another flower of a different plant. So this is called as cross-pollination. Next, so when we say now we'll come to the fertilization part of the plant. Fertilization part of the plant, where the male and the female gametes, they fuse together to form the zygote. Then only we say fertilization has occurred. The male gamete comes from the pollen grains in case of plants, and the female part will produce that is the ovary or the ovule will produce the female gamete, and both of them will fuse together to form the zygote. So the male gamete is haploid. Okay, so that's why I've given N. Female gametes are also haploid. Now when the zygote is formed, we have twice N, that is diploid. The male and the female gametes individual are haploid, whereas the zygote is always diploid. One comes from the male, one comes from the female. So we have twice N, that is the diploid. Zygote is formed. So the male germ cell produced by the pollen grains will fuse with the female gamete present in the ovule to form the zygote. Now when we talk about the pollen grains, so this is the structure of a pollen grain, where we see, so pollens are present in the anther. So if I take a cross section of the anther, if you'll see this in this manner. Okay, so inside you'll have small hole like structure. These are the pollen sacs where we have the pollen grains. Okay, so millions, thousands of pollen grains are present there inside the pollen sacs, and each pollen grain looks like something like this in the right hand side picture. If you see, so you have the outermost layer, rough structure, that is called as exine. Then we have a inner smooth layer, that is called intine. Then we have a vegetative nucleus and a generative cell consisting of generating nucleus. So these are the parts of a pollen grain. So the outer rough layer, that is very strong, and it is called as the exine, exine. Okay, so that we can remember. And the inner layer is called as intine. And the nucleus, so we have two types of nucleus in the pollen grain. One is the generative nucleus present in the generative cell, and another is the vegetative nucleus. Okay, so which will take part in the formation of the pollen tube. So this is a part of the structure of the pollen grain. Now what happens is, once the pollen gets stuck to the stigma, the pollen grains start forming the pollen tube. Okay, so the pollen tube will start forming as soon as the pollen gets stuck to the stigma. So here what happens, the pollen tube will produce the will carry the male gametes through the tube, and then it will enter the stigma, then the style, and then to the ovary for the fertilization. So generative nucleus will, so two male gametes will enter through the pollen tube through the and then to the stigma. So the tube nucleus that is present will help in the growth of the pollen tube, whereas the generative nucleus consists of the male gametes. As I have already told you, so the generative nucleus will consist of the male gametes, whereas the tube nucleus takes part in the formation of the or the elongation of the pollen tube. And this is the female part of the flower, that is your stigma, style, and ovary. So the ovary part is consists of these following parts. The ovary consists of the ovule, okay, this part. So you see, you have a outer layer called as nucellus. You have two polar nuclei, which is also haploid, and an egg cell. So egg cell is also haploid, and you have integuments outside, okay. And this is the this is also of ovule structure of an ovule. So here you have the different layers where we have the inner integument, outer integuments, okay. This is the outer integuments, this is the inner integuments, then you have the nucellus, okay. These are the different parts of a ovule, and inside the ovule we have two polar nuclei and egg cell, which are both are the female gametes. So during fertilization, that is the fusion of male and female gametes, so zygote will be formed. So now once pollination is done, after that fertilization takes place in plants. So what are the different events of fertilization, or what are the different steps that occurs or seen in fertilization process in plants? So what will happen once the pollen grains lands on the stigma of the ovary, the pollen tube starts growing, okay. They will travel through the style, okay, this is the style, this part is the style, and reach the ovary. So here is the ovary and you have the ovules, and then through the micropyle. The pollen tube, as we have already seen, it has two male germ cells. Each ovule has two, and the ovule will have two polar nuclei and a female germ cell. We have already seen. So two polar nuclei and one germ cell, that is the egg cell, and in male we have two generative nucleus, that is a male gametes. So what will happen is, after that the pollen tube releases the two male germ cells inside the ovule, where one of them will fuse with the female germ cell, okay. So the female germ cell, it will come and the one of the male two male germ cells are there, so out of two, one will come and fuse with the female germ cell, okay, and forms a zygote which grows into a baby plant, that is the embryo. So they will result in the embryo. So fusion of one male germ cell with the female egg cell, that will form the embryo, and that process is known as syngamy. And the one more is there, remember, the other male germ cell. So this will go and fuse with the two polar nuclei that was present in the female reproductive part. So that will fuse with the two polar nucleus, okay. So that process is called as triple fusion, where one of the male gamete will fuse with the two polar nuclei of the female reproductive part of the flower, and that process is called triple fusion. So in flowering plants we have two types of fusion, so that's why it is called as double fertilization. So two types of fusion occurs. One is with the female gamete or the egg to form the embryo, so this is one fertilization. Another with the two polar nuclei, so this is another fertilization. So two fertilization is taking place, that's why we call it as double fertilization, okay. So that's what it is. So two polar nuclei, so one of the male gamete will come and fuse with the two polar nuclei, and the other one will fuse with the egg cell and form the embryo. So this egg cell, when the male gamete fuses with the egg cell, it forms a zygote and develops into an embryo, which ultimately leads to the formation of a new plant. And the two polar nuclei and the male gamete will fuse together, and then it forms the endosperm, The seed contains endosperm, which is responsible for the food storage or helps in the providing food to the growing plant. So that is the function of the endosperm. So the endosperm is formed from the two polar nuclei along with the male gamete once it fuses. And the integuments that were there present, the outer and the inner integuments, so that will give rise to the seed cover. So the cover of the seed is formed from the integuments. The zygote will develop into the embryo and into a new plant. The endosperm is formed from the fusion of the polar nuclei and the male gamete. Okay, so this is how the parts of the seeds are formed, or the parts of the embryo are formed. And remember, endosperm is 3n because two polar nuclei plus one male gamete, so 3n. Zygote is twice n, it is haploid, diploid, because one from the male, one from the female. So zygote is twice n, endosperm, that is with the polar nuclei, so we have 3n. Okay. Now, once fertilization is done, once fertilization has occurred, so what are the different changes that occurs after fertilization? So that is called as post-fertilization changes. So after fertilization, what are the changes that takes place? First, the zygote divides several times and forms an embryo inside the ovule. So inside the ovule, the embryo that is present, the zygote will keep on dividing and then it forms the embryo. The ovule develops a tough coat and changes into a seed. So the ovule will convert into the seed, and the ovary part of the flower will grow and will form the fruit. So ovary forms the fruit, the ovule forms the seed, and rest all parts, that is the petals, sepals, stamens, styles, stigma, they all will shrivel and they will ultimately fall off. Nothing will remain, only the seed or the embryo will be there, where the ovule will convert into the seed and the ovary will be converting into the fruit. So these are the different changes, or these are the post fertilization changes that you will see after fertilization. So this is what it happens. So the flowers, all the parts of the flowers will fall off, only the ovary and the ovule remains. So one will convert into seed, one will convert into the fruit. And inside the embryo, we have the seed coat. The outer covering is called the seed coat, and we have the endosperm, which we have already learned. Endosperm is formed by the polar nuclei. Okay. And so this will ultimately form the seed. From the seed, after germination, the seedlings will occur, and it will give rise to a new plant. Now, when we talk about the different parts of the seed, okay, a seed, it can be a monocot seed or a dicot, depending on how many cotyledons a seed will have. If it is only one cotyledon, then we call it monocotyledon. And if that, for example, corn seeds, so this is a corn seed, so it is a monocot, one cotyledon is present. And if you have two, for example, bean seeds, so they are dicotyledon because two cotyledons are present. So seeds can be monocot or a dicot. Okay, now so cotyledons, main part is the cotyledons, which stores food for the future plant. Then we have the embryo, the inner part, that is the embryo. So it has two parts, plumule and radicle. Okay, so the plumule will give rise to new shoot and the radicle will give rise to a new root. So when the seedling grows, so the part of the plant, the upper part of the plant, that is the shoot, will be formed from the plumule and the root will be formed from the radicle. And the process of development of a seedling from the embryo under appropriate condition is known as germination. So we have the different layers of seeds. So the embryo can be classified into two types. One part is your cotyledon and another part is the embryonal axis. The embryonal axis consists of the plumule, radicle. Then we have epicotyl, hypocotyl, point of attachment of the cotyledons. So if you see on the left hand side, we can see the different parts. So seed coat, the outer covering. Then you have the micropyle here. Then we have the helium here. We have the plumule, which will give rise to new shoot. We have the radicle, which will give rise to new root. Then this is your hypocotyl part and this is the cotyledon part. So these are the different parts of a seed. So that's all, children. I hope you liked my video and you have understood what I have taught till now. So going forward, we'll have few more videos coming up related to this chapter. So keep watching and click on the bell notification so that you get the latest updates when any video is uploaded. So, and enjoy reading.